Are we going to see him again soon? Maya asked. We are going there to have breakfast with them, Vid advised. Vid, are you taking bodyguards? Maya asked. If we took bodyguards, we might have to protect them. Dmitri or Kozlov will be enough. Vid Pusin laughed at the idea, then he remembered. Honey, I wear the black lanyard. I transported 225 people to the goldfield on the Arctic Circle. Need I remind you, you now wear the red lanyard? We can protect ourselves. Oh, now I understand why you said what you said about protecting bodyguards. What is the dress? Blue jeans, plaid shirt, and boots with that green jacket. Put some layers on the boy so we can unwrap him if need be. Maybe a change of clothes for him. Vid offered. We are seeing the President and First Lady of the United States, and you are suggesting blue jeans? Maya was outraged. Honey, this is an informal get-together. I hope to do something similar once a month. Ask Willa. I'm sure she will call Jenny. Vid laughed as he handed his phone to Willa. When Dmitri came back in, he handed Vid 3 roughed-out papers. Tony was wiping the block of gold with a damp towel and bringing more of the golden color out from under the dirt that had been on it for hundreds of thousands of years. Vid watched as Willa got her phone out and dialed someone. His guess was Jenny Taylor. He looked at the time and laughed. It had to be 6:30 in the morning in Omak. After 10 minutes, Willa hung up both phones. She brought Vid's phone back over to him. Boots, blue jeans, and a plaid shirt will be fine. Dmitri came back in with the 3 documents his president wanted. Vid looked at each one carefully. He then picked up his favorite pen and signed the documents. He moved the empty box with the instructions over to one side when he thought, John Taylor could send in a nuclear bomb just as easy as that phone box. Then it hit him hard. He could send out a nuclear bomb just as easy to anywhere in the world. Then he heard, fear not, the road to the 1,000 years of peace will take courage to get there. Fear will bring all of the horrible things you can imagine. That sounded like Gaia. It is. Why does this feel like Star Wars? Because we have been working on this planet Earth for a long time. This came from a very deep man's voice. Who are you? Vid thought. White Eagle, the voice responded. John. He is on Earth. We are not him. He is part of us. Vid had many questions to ask God. He put the bundle in his briefcase Kozlov had given him at the Arctic Circle. He carefully placed the file in the lid flap so the documents would not be damaged. He was ready to go. He looked over and had to smile as Tony was sitting in a chair with Willa sitting on his lap. The two certainly made a cute couple. Vid reached into his desk and pulled out a little box. He checked it, smiled, and remembered he had purchased it years ago. His young friends had given him hope for the future. He put the little box with the ring into his briefcase and closed it. Shall we go find Maya and Scott? Dmitri and Willa pulled Tony to his feet, so they all came to stand before Vid. He laughed at the antics of the young people. For the first time since 2010, Vid Pusin felt everything was going to be okay. He was even beginning to believe he would see his little boy grow up and be a man, maybe even the last president of the Federation of Russia. Vid looked at the 3 and nodded and transported them to his living room. He thought, my God, what power I have. Dmitri, Tony, please join with me. When Maya comes out here in blue jeans and a plaid shirt, give her a whistle, Vidal asked. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. You've got to be kidding? Willa, Maya is a girly girl. She would think a ball gown would be okay for a pig wrestling contest or to paint the house in. I plan on retiring to my family's apple orchard someday. Blue jeans will be the standard outfit, Vid snickered. When Maya came around the corner, there were 4 whistles. Willa's was the best. Maya looked like she belonged on a ranch in the heart of Texas. Maya turned bright red. She felt more uncomfortable than if she'd been naked. She wouldn't go to the post office wearing what she had on. But as she looked at the proud, smiling face of Vid, her embarrassment ceased, and her anger dissipated. Her love for that man made everything okay. She came over and hugged Vid. Are you having a good day? Best in the world, and I wanted to get back to you so we can talk about it, Vid whispered. Scott came running in and stopped only when he hit his daddy's legs. Vid reached down and picked up his son. We have other guests, Maya announced, Mika Kozlov and Yelena with their cameraman. Vid looked to Tony and got a nod of his head. How are we doing on time? 15 to 20 minutes, sir, Tony suggested. Willa and Dmitri had pulled Tony's and Willa's suitcases out of the bedroom. They arrived back as Mika Kozlov and Yelena with the cameraman came into the living room from the dining room. Everybody ready? Vid asked. Are we going? Yelena didn't even have time to finish her question. They were standing there looking at God again. Tony, you said that God could give us clothes? Vid asked. Yes, hold your hand against God and ask for what you want. Tony had taken off the heavy coat and showed the instant change. Willa had done the same. Captain Kozlov, Yelena, we are going to have breakfast with President John Taylor of the new United States. You are welcome to go with us, but I would suggest for all three of you, blue jeans, flannel shirts, and a nice coat. I think their weather is like Moscow. You're going as part of my family. John Taylor and I want to get together from time to time over a meal. President Putin shared, We want to end war. Yelena translated, Yes, sir. Mika Kozlov agreed. Thank you, Mr. President. Tony also agreed. Gentlemen, today I want to do family things. Tomorrow, Mika, you and I will have to do many things to save our nation. You will be Captain Kozlov and I will be President Putin again. But today, all of you, please call me Vid. Let's go play. Vid said in Russian. The men had been separated from the ladies as they prepared for the trip. Vid, I get a sense that there may be a proposal of marriage. My father started a tradition. We served our mates lobster for dinner. When Dad asked Mom to marry him, he did it, and I fed Willa lobster on our wedding night. Tony shared very quietly. Are we going someplace that has lobster on the menu? Vid whispered back. Not on the menu, but Sue has a 100-gallon tank in the kitchen with fresh lobsters in it. Tony laughed. Where does he get his lobsters from? Mika asked. I have no idea. Tony laughed. I don't have a ring. Mika shared. Vid translated. Ask God for a wedding ring for Yelena, Tony suggested in Russian. Mika took a deep breath and touched God. There was a beautiful ring in Mika's right hand. Wow, he whispered. The men joined the ladies and Vid asked, Has anybody had lobster? Willa giggled knowingly. No, but I've always wanted to try it, Maya shared. Are we going someplace that has lobster? Yelena asked. I thought we were going to America to have breakfast. I've had lobster. Willa laughed. My Tony served me lobster on my wedding night. It was delicious. We are going to Sue's family restaurant. He's the best cook in the world. He has over 1,000 people come to eat at his place every day. Are we dressed okay? Maya asked. You will look like the natives. Willa laughed, even while sitting at the president's table. Tony, can you take us to your home? Vid asked. Everyone, please take a deep breath, Tony suggested. They landed in the parking lot of the bank across the street from Sue's family restaurant. Tony led the way across the street, and together with Mika, they opened the double doors. Tony noticed a change. Now there was an entryway with another set of double doors. Winter is coming. It will help keep the cold out. Once they got in, Tony saw his dad and Jenny just sitting down at the president's table. The rest of the seats were occupied by Peter, Patty, Johnny, Teresa, and Bill and Nancy McCormick. John caught Tony's eye and stood straight as his guest came near. George, son of Sue, recognized the president of the Federation of Russia. He proceeded to the table, handing out the breakfast menu, while two of his sisters placed water glasses and filled coffee cups as they were wanted. Tony stood. George, can we show our guests your kitchen? Tony smiled and winked, giving George a clue that something exciting was underfoot. Yes, sir. Who all wants to come? George asked. 7 men stood with Tony. George knew his dad did not like customers entering the kitchen. He shook off his dad being upset. Follow me, gentlemen. When they entered, George held the door, allowing John Taylor to be the first one for Sue to see. John looked up at the tank at the lobsters. Master Sue, I want to introduce a friend from Russia, Mr. Vid Pusin. John shared. Oh, Mr. Pusin, Mr. Taylor. I now have 2 presidents in my restaurant. Can I have pictures, gentlemen? Yes, you may, dear sir. President Pusin answered. Let me feed you, my presidents. If you are pleased, then I get my pictures, okay? Sue asked. Tony looked at both Vid and John laughing. Yes, Sue, make this a fun time for us. We may have 1 or 2 marriage proposals. We want to serve all 7 of the ladies a lobster dinner. Is this possible? Sue was still thinking about where he would post his pictures. He looked at Tony, then John, who had a question on his face. He looked at Vid Pusin, who was smiling and nodding. Yes, we will serve all ladies at President's Table lobster dinner. Sue spoke with one of his cooks in training to heat some water. And the men, what do they eat? John looked around at the men. Buffalo steaks and eggs with hash browns. John got nods all around. Let me get to work. Food is being prepared. Sue made motions for the men to leave his kitchen. I think we are being chased out of the kitchen, John laughed as he led the men to the big table. George followed the men and started taking the orders for the meals. He took the orders, explaining to the ladies that their main dish had already been selected. Each of the ladies looked to their partner, but only got a smile. George brought out 2 bowls of fruit with a small fork for each of the kids. The 2 boys dived into their little mountain of fruit and carried on having a great time. Tony, can you share how your trip to Russia turned out? Vid Pusin asked. Tony looked to John and got a nod. We did great. We stopped at Coop. Vidi added, Maya, Scott, Dimitri, and I owe our lives to Tony and Willa. Vid nodded to Tony to continue. Dimitri had never been included in such a way from Mother Russia. His loyalty and devotion skyrocketed as a little smile came to his face. We have over 400 trained men and women. We also promoted 2 individuals to the rank of the Black Lanyard. Tony was laughing as Vid and Mika showed off their black lanyards. We found the gold deposit, and again I get it is possible to be 50,000 metric tons. And on the surface, it looks like 92% gold, plus silver, copper, and other metals. Vid opened his briefcase. He took the package that held the 10-pound cube of gold from the Arctic find and unwrapped it. Pass that down to Tony and Willa, please. When Tony and Willa had it in front of them, I thought you might want a sample of your find. Willa let out an all right. Thank you, sir. Tony and Willa were all smiles as they touched their 10-pound block of gold. We have made some very good friends, I hope for a lifetime. I have some more gifts for our 2 young friends. Vid got the go-ahead from John. Tony and Willa lived in my home for 15 days. I fully understand why you consider them as adults. They are adults. I have signed 2 proclamations stating Tony and Willa are citizens of the Federation of Russia for life. Vide passed the certificates along with the folder. I also have 2 paid internships for positions in our Treasury Department for both Tony and Willa Taylor. I support these 2 in what they want to accomplish and become. When they are ready, our universities will be waiting for them with housing, books, and tuition, all free with a nice living allowance. After Vid passed that certificate to Tony and Willa, he sat as everyone else stood and applauded. Tony and Willa were hugging and laughing. They both said thank you to Vid Pusin. Salads for the ladies were delivered to the table. Coffee and water were topped off. The junior seafood sampler plates also were being delivered to the boys. How did your trip to Denver turn out, John? Abidao asked. We lost 4 men. They were killed, but they have ascended. John pulled out 10 yellow bags from his big case. There are 1,200 Russian rubles that I believe are the property of the Federation of Russia. We found approximately 15,000 metric tons more in coins and bricks. The coins are very old and are certainly Russian. There is what appears to be another 5,000 metric tons in the same room. It is also identified in the paperwork as Russian. Shall we move it on Monday? Vid reached into the bag and took out a handful of Russian 1-ounce rubles. Vid looked over at Maya with a smile on his face. Monday would be fine. Vid noticed Sal's staff converging on the table. They had 4 carts full of plates. Around the table could be heard, "Lobster?" from 7 different places. Yelena's cameraman was up filming what was going on. He had been with the men and was ready for it. John stood. When I asked Jenny to be my wife, I fed her lobster. Tony did the same for Willa on her wedding night. Lobster to me means love. I feel it is the ultimate that we can give to acknowledge our chosen partners. All the men agreed. Here, here! Willa was sitting on Tony's lap kissing him. Johnny and Teresa had their heads together. Patty followed her sister and was sitting on Peter's lap. Vid and Mika were both kneeling next to their partners. Jenny got up and kissed John in appreciation. Sue and his wife stood off to the side, watching and smiling. Both Yelena and Maya showed off their new rings. John continued to hold on to Jenny and just laughed. Thank you, God, our world looks promising. I want to thank you for our friends. Thank you for this food. Many blessings for all on our planet. John sat down. Let's eat! The table was quiet for many minutes as everyone enjoyed what was before them. The two boys had done a good job on their servings. They were both starting to get bored. Sal's two little daughters came over and asked if the boys wanted to go to the play area. The boys' dinner came with wet wipes, and Jenny and Maya cleaned up the two boys. Willie, you want to show Scott the toys? Willie nodded. Okay, go play. And when you want an ice cream cone, come back. Jenny watched her son almost climb out of the high chair. Scott was a little slower, but he certainly planned on going with his excited friend. Jenny and Maya watched as the two boys were holding onto the hands of Sue's daughters, heading for the play area. Both mothers stood and followed their sons. Dimitri followed them. Ladies, I will watch your children. They will be safe. Dimitri, Willie knows what an ice cream cone is. He may want to come back in 10 to 15 minutes. Jenny shared, that would be fine. The two ladies returned to the president's table with smiles. Jenny, I get to see what my Scott will be like in 6 months, Maya shared. You will lose weight trying to keep up with him. Jenny laughed with Maya. Back at the table. John, how does Mother Russia get a herd of American buffalo? Vid asked. We thought you might want your own herd. John smiled. This meat is raised wild on the range. My friends John and Billy Nation suggest 1,000 of our cows that will birth in the spring. They also suggest adding 100 young bulls and 5 old bulls. The old bulls will lead the herd. The herd will need 10,000 acres and several good water sources. In the spring, they suggest you double the acreage. There is a national park in the south near the Black Sea, near my family's apple orchard. There are tens of thousands of acres, much of it in grass and hay, with good water and forest, where the buffalo could shelter in harsh weather. We have been wanting farmers to harvest the hay and have their livestock graze the land. Access is very poor, and the farmers are reluctant because they cannot put up fences. We stopped development decades ago when plans for a hydroelectric dam project was being proposed. Now much of our needs are being addressed with natural gas. It would be ideal for the buffalo. Vid looked at John with a big smile. The two men shook hands, then Vid asked, how much? 1,000 gold rubles. John shared. Mika, how did you like your steak? Vid asked. Best I have had, sir. I usually use steak sauce, not on this. And I'm hearing this is good for us. Wow. Mika's eyes were big. He had been served a 16-ounce steak with mountains of eggs and hash browns. His plates were clean. Mika, we just bought a herd of 105 buffalo. They will have 1,000 babies in the spring. Vid got everyone from Moscow speaking and talking at once. He grabbed the 10 bags of rubles and set them in front of John. John counted out 8 stacks of 10 rubles. He took the other 40 rubles and added them to his bags. He put the 80 rubles back into its original bag. He moved the 80-count bag plus a full bag of 120 rubles, setting them in front of Vid. Delivery Thursday and Friday? Mika, what if we put our buffalo herd in Pripyatnitsky Obori National Park? Vid asked. I've been there, well, Yelena shared. The buffalo should do very well there. Willie and Scott came back. They both had little toy cars. The little cars are gifts from Sue and his family. Dimitri shared. George took orders on desserts. We have ice cream cones for the boys, vanilla on the bottom, strawberry in the middle, and chocolate on top. My father has 3 cheesecakes fresh from the oven. As George is stating this, his oldest sister brought out the cones for the boys. Willie picked up his cone. Scott watched and followed his actions. After a good lick, Scott turned to his mom. Mommy, good! Maya had never been in a restaurant that had cared for her son like this one. He was having a blast and she was able to interact with others. She looked over at Vid. I want to come back here again. She smiled and glanced down at Scott, then looked at Vid again. Willa went with the cone if Tony did the cheesecake plate. She wanted bits of the cheesecakes and the ice cream too. Willie and Scott had sold the table on the cones. George went back to the kitchen. One sister was making cones. The other sister was putting 3 slices of cheesecake on the plates. How many? 9 cones, 7 cheesecakes. George realized he just got beat out of his tips for the table. He did not think that both presidents would end up eating cones. Both sisters laughed. He had to quit betting with them. The desserts were a fun activity with lots of trading among the partners. The two boys watching these crazily excited adults bouncing around as they quietly licked their cones. "Your older son, what does he do?" Vito asked. "Johnny is my vice president. The man sitting next to him is Bill McCormick. His wife is Nancy. She is my assistant." Bill McCormick was a Seattle police officer. He is also Johnny's best friend and watches his back. They have just returned from the East Coast. They told me they have petitions from all of the states on the East Coast to join us. John shared, "Leslie Treese is to be in this afternoon and has told me she also has petitions for the rest of the U.S. to join with the Western states again." "Congratulations, John." Vid put his hand out to shake. John looked at Vid and met the hand with his own. "Thank you. That means a very great deal." "Can we hear from your son and his friends?" Vid asked. "Johnny, Bill, Nancy, and Teresa, can you tell us your story?" John spoke a little louder to carry to the end of the table. Bill jumped to his feet. "My presidents, ladies and gentlemen, we have another custom besides lobster. We start meetings with promotions. This meal started with 7 black lanyards at the table. We have 3 more to add to that. John, you are the father. I thought you might want to participate in this." John stood up, and as he moved around the table, he stopped at Jenny and kissed her. "The box that was next to the dresser, where did it go?" John asked. "Oh, the box with the lanyards in it. I put it in Tony's room." Jenny shared and watched her mate close his eyes for 10 seconds. John opened his eyes and smiled. "Got them. Thank you." He kissed Jenny again and continued on his way to Bill, Johnny, and their wives. "What has happened? Tell the table, Bill, please." "Yes, sir." Bill turned to the table and with a loud voice said, "We started going to board meetings on the East Coast. These were international corporations that were still left here in America. Many others have gone down with the cities of New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C. We got shot at many times because Johnny was the new vice president. I saw my friend become very angry. At the many board meetings, we decided every time to take everybody in the building to God. John, it was just like Langley. We would take hundreds of people and only a few came back. By the 3rd night of board meetings, the ones coming back were asking us to visit their corporate headquarters the next day. We tried to get them to God, but most of them went into the sun. When Congress evacuated, those politicians in states adjacent to D.C. left by car. Many were still alive. We got to meet them at many of the corporate board meetings. They were very much involved with the corporations. They're gone. Sometimes the 4 of us were transporting 20,000 to 30,000 people at a time. I'd like to introduce to you my First Lady, Nancy McCormick." John handed Bill a black lanyard to put around Nancy's neck. Everyone in the restaurant cheered. Johnny placed a black lanyard around Teresa's neck. "Someday Teresa will be our First Lady of the nation." Again, everyone in the restaurant cheered and applauded a little louder. When it had quieted, "When we exited Seattle," my son told me, "I made it look too easy. I told him then and today proves it. John Taylor Jr. is far, far ahead of me when I was his age. When he reaches my age now, he will be worlds ahead of me again." John put the black lanyard around his son's neck. The place went wild. People were moving in the direction of Johnny and the 2 young ladies. John looked over at George and motioned for him to come closer. "Did you lose a bet?" George looked down and was going to deny it, then thought better of it. He was starting to be able to read others. "Yes, sir." John leaned close and whispered, "Your sister." "Sisters?" George shared. "Your sister is cheating by going to God, learning what is about to happen, then betting with you after she knows the outcome." John shared, "You need to bring your sisters to me at the bank after school." "Okay," George agreed. John handed him $3 silver on the quiet. George whispered, "Thank you, sir." John winked. John and Vid went over and sat back down and worked on their cones some more. Willie and Scott were talking to them about cones. The 2 men laughed with their sons. They only understood their sons really liked the ice cream cones. Russian gibberish sounded very much like English gibberish. John, what do you do with the Muslims? Vid asked. I do not judge. I take them to God. I have total belief in the system that negative people will not make it to God. John smiled. I have seen Muhammad standing there in front of God, giving his believers guidance. So is this a religion? I asked. Ask God. I hate religions almost as much as politics. John laughed. Religions all have truths, often based on different perspectives. You and I, we could start on the west side of our great nations and take hundreds of different paths to get to a city on our east coast. Once we get to our destination, can we not realize that every path has some validity and truth to it? We have both been to God many times. Before we are done, 5 billion people on this planet will have been to God. War will be a distant memory. To me, that is proof that every path is correct. Every religion has truth in it, but they have served their purpose and can now graduate and take on the understanding that we are all children of God. You show me your way and then require me to find my own way. I think the world has been waiting for you. We need politicians and elders who can be trusted. All the examples before us, they were more like criminals. I will try to follow your example using more truth instead of what the people want to hear. Vid smiled. Thank you, Vid. Twice today, I have been humbled by things you have said. I will also do all that I can to live up to those words. John also smiled. I have read that you were John, the disciple of Jesus. Why are you not a Christian? Vidi asked. I was John, the disciple of Jesus. You can verify that with God. Jesus is my brother and best friend. He is not and never was a Christian. I have gone through a process of ordination, but I'm an independent. I have no affiliation with any religion. My only desire is to allow you and everyone else to make a one-to-one relationship with God and learn all you and everybody else wants to know. John shared, what would you like to do today? I would like to see a few things I can do in Russia to help my people. I would like to see the bridge where Tony and Willa stopped the convicts. The river where I hope to be able to bring my older son and catch a fish with him in the future. I would like to see your home with the gold deposit in the backyard. Then I would like to sit and talk with you some more, and maybe learn more about your Denver trip. As Vid listed his hopes, John nodded in agreement. I want to take you to the high school 4-H group first. They are hatching 1,000 baby chickens a week. John shared, how does 1,000 baby chickens a week help my country? Vid asked. John laughed. We have 17 other high schools that have started the program, producing chicks along with 40 other schools that are putting it together. If we can spread this across the country, then somewhere down the road people can eat by their own efforts. We still have around 70,000 high schools. Yes, I want to see this. This can help my country and other countries. Vid was nodding as he realized the possibilities. John was talking about 3 or 4 billion chickens a year. I want to take you to the fish hatchery. We will be near the bridge in my favorite spot to fish. John laughed as he looked around. Everyone was seated listening to the two men. Jenny made a phone call on her satellite phone to Becky. Do you want to join us? We are going to the chicken and fish hatcheries. Okay, see you soon. Jenny mouthed to John. The kids are joining us. John, what do you call your belief or movement? Vid asked as he looked about. John looked around at all of the smiling faces. I don't know what to call it. Perhaps the Children of God movement. I do know I feel everyone in this restaurant are my brothers and sisters. John had raised his voice just a little bit, but everyone heard his declaration and stood once again in applause and agreement. Jenny and Patty both were able to see John's heart chakra when he stood up. Willie and Scott were both pointing at it. When the others looked at John, they saw a very bright light, and in the center of that light was a very green color. John looked around with some pride, but he was also a bit embarrassed at the attention. His inner voice told him not to hide in humbleness. Taking center stage was still a bit unfamiliar and more than a little uncomfortable for him. Vid looked over at Maya. She was touching her red lanyard and smiling. He looked at Mika. His face had a different look. Vid thought perhaps one of, what did I do to deserve sitting at a table with 2 presidents, one being the Christ and engaged to one of the most beautiful women in all of Russia? Mika. Vid spoke, only loud enough to get Mika's attention. Kiss your fiancé. Mika turned to Yelena. Can I kiss you? Yelena stopped what she was doing. Yes. The attentions of the two disappeared for a bit as they focused on each other. Yelena had just started on her road. So far, she had been able to stop a tennis ball. Mika had guided her, and their cameraman had filmed it. It was scheduled to go out over the news networks in Russia. Yelena was explaining the steps, and they were looking for a producer for a weekly national TV series. In the weeks to come, Yelena and her new husband-to-be Mika would become two of the most well-known people in Russia. Within a few months, they would have all the Russian people trained to some extent. The party left Sal's family restaurant. Pictures had been taken, and John slipped 3 more silver coins to George to cover the tab. They went outside, and John transported them to the 4-H barn next to the high school. George came with them. Becky and more than a dozen kids were with her. All the other Taylor children were there.